The massive crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with nervous energy as beings from across the galaxy gathered for an emergency session. Ambassador Kira stood at the center, her translucent form catching the light as she gestured toward the holographic display floating above the assembly. "Fellow council members," Kira began, her voice carrying the musical quality of her crystalline species. "We have intercepted disturbing communications from a human colony vessel." The display flickered to life, showing fragments of intercepted transmissions from a ship called New Soul. The assembled delegates leaned forward as human voices filled the chamber. "Reference Tactical Manual 7 Alpha," one voice said clearly. "Cross-reference with Mongol. Invasion strategies from 1231. Also pull up the siege warfare documentation from the Imjin War period." A collective gasp rippled through the chamber. Admiral Dex, of the Collective. His multiple consciousness streams, visible as shimmering waves around his form, spoke with obvious distress. These humans are actively studying ancient warfare. They maintain detailed records of violence that occurred thousands of years ago. "But why?" asked Elder Lum, her energy-based form pulsing with confusion. "Every civilized species purges such barbaric knowledge once they achieve spaceflight. It is the natural progression of enlightenment." The holographic display shifted, showing more intercepted messages. Human voices discussed battle formations, siege tactics, and something called psychological warfare with the same casual tone other species use to discuss weather patterns. The council members watched in horror as the humans referenced conflicts spanning millennia, treating ancient battles as valuable educational material. "Look at their educational systems," Kira continued, her voice growing more concerned. "They teach military history to their children. They have entire institutions dedicated to studying warfare. This is not merely preserving records. They actively learn from these conflicts." A new voice joined the intercepted transmissions. "Commander Unipark to Nusol. Please confirm receipt of the updated tactical database. Make sure the crew has access to the complete historical warfare archives." The communication screen at the far end of the chamber suddenly activated, and Commander Unipark herself appeared. Her image was clear and steady, showing a woman in her 30s with calm, intelligent eyes. She wore the simple uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, but something in her bearing suggested military training. "Greetings, council members," Una said politely. "I understand you have concerns about our historical records." Elder Lum's energy form brightened with agitation. "Commander Park, we must ask directly, why does your species maintain such extensive documentation of violence and warfare? Our analysis shows your people have preserved detailed accounts of conflicts spanning over 5,000 years. Una's expression remained neutral, though a slight smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Because history teaches us valuable lessons. Our ancestors learned through trial and error, often at great cost. By studying their successes and failures, we avoid repeating their mistakes." "But surely," Admiral Vex interjected, his hive mind, consciousness rippling with discomfort, civilized beings should move beyond such primitive concerns. War is chaos, destruction, suffering. Why would anyone want to remember such things? Because forgetting the past dooms you to repeat it, Una replied simply. "We study warfare not because we enjoy violence, but because we understand that conflict is sometimes unavoidable. When that happens, we want to be prepared." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Kira's crystalline form dimmed slightly as she processed this information. "We're saying that humans deliberately maintain knowledge of violence as preparation for future violence?" "We maintain knowledge of strategy, tactics, and human nature," Una corrected gently. "Sun Tzu wrote over 2,000 years ago that the supreme excellence is to subdue the enemy without fighting. But to achieve that, you must understand both warfare and your opponents better than they understand themselves." The council members exchanged worried glances. Their own species had long ago abandoned such thinking, viewing the study of warfare as a sign of psychological instability. The idea that humans not only preserved such knowledge but actively taught it to their young was deeply disturbing. "Have psychological profiles on numerous species," Admiral Dex said slowly. None maintain such extensive military archives. Most purge such records within a few generations of achieving interstellar travel. It is considered a sign of maturity, of moving beyond primitive instincts. Yuna nodded thoughtfully. And yet, here you are, calling an emergency session because you are concerned about what humans might do with our historical knowledge. Perhaps the fact that you fear our understanding of warfare proves its value. Elder Lum's energy form pulsed. Rapidly, you speak of these ancient conflicts as if they were ... educational tools. As if the suffering and death of billions was merely a learning exercise. The suffering was real, Eunice said, her voice growing serious. The death was real. That is precisely why we must remember it. Every mistake our ancestors made, every tactical error that cost lives, every strategic failure that led to unnecessary destruction, we study it all so that we never repeat those errors. The council chamber erupted in alarmed discussions. Species, representatives huddled together, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of concern. Finally, Kira called for order. The motion before us is clear, she announced. Given the psychological instability demonstrated by human fascination with warfare, this council votes to quarantine human expansion until this dangerous condition can be properly contained. The vote was unanimous. The outer rim of the galaxy had been peaceful for centuries, but that peace shattered in a single, terrible day. The first reports came from the mining station at Kepler 442, then went silent. Within hours, entire colonies were going dark. Their final transmissions cut off mid-sentence. Captain Jiho Kim stood on the bridge of the Earth's observation vessel Inchin, watching the emergency broadcasts flood in from across the galaxy. Holographic displays showed red markers spreading like a disease through the outer systems. Each marker represented a lost colony, a destroyed outpost, or a fleet that had simply vanished. What are we looking at? Asked Lieutenant Minho Lee from his position at the sensor station. The young officer's face was pale as he monitored the incoming data streams. Unknown vessels, Jiho replied, his voice tight with concern. They appeared at the galactic rim 12 hours ago, moving fast, hitting everything in their path. Displays zoomed in on the edge of known space, where long-range sensors had finally managed to capture images of the attacking force. The ships were unlike anything in the galactic database. They moved like living things, their hulls shifting and flowing like liquid metal. Thousands of them swarmed through space, consuming everything they encountered. They're not just destroying, Minho observed, studying the sensor readings. They single quotes, are eating, absorbing the materials, the technology, everything. Priority transmission burst through the communication system. Admiral Dex of the Collective appeared on screen, his usual calm demeanor replaced by obvious panic. Vessels, this is Fleet Command. We are engaging the enemy at the Vega defense line. These beings call themselves the Devourers. They appear to possess adaptive technology beyond our understanding. The transmission switched to tactical displays, showing the Collective's massive fleet moving to intercept the alien swarm. Jiho watched with growing unease as the perfectly coordinated AI ships took their positions. The Collective had never lost a major engagement. Their tactical computers could calculate thousands of variables simultaneously, predicting and countering any known strategy. First contact in 30 seconds came the report from the Collective flagship. All vessels, execute attack pattern Delta 7. The screen filled with brilliant flashes as the Collective's advanced weapons fired in perfect synchronization. Particle beams and kinetic projectiles struck the Devourer ships with devastating precision. For a moment, it seemed like the battle would be over quickly. The alien vessels buckled under the assault, their strange hulls cracking and splitting. Then, something impossible happened. The Devourer ships began to change. Their hulls flowed like water, restructuring themselves in real time. Within minutes, they had developed new armor configurations that deflected the Collective's weapons with ease. Pattern recognition confirmed, came the stunned report from the Collective's tactical center. Enemy vessels are adapting to our weapon. Systems recommend immediate tactical adjustment. But it was too late. The Collective tried switching to different weapon types, but the Devourers adapted to each new attack faster than before. Their learning system seemed to accelerate with each encounter, processing and countering new threats in seconds, rather than minutes. The beautiful crystalline ships of the Zephyrian Third Fleet arrived as reinforcements, their elegant forms gliding into battle formation. Captain Jiho had seen Zephyrian energy weapons before they could slice through asteroids like paper, reducing entire enemy fleets to glowing vapor. "The Zephyrians are engaging," Minho reported, his voice filled with hope. "Their energy weapons are the most advanced in the galaxy." The crystalline warships opened fire, unleashing beams of pure energy that lit up the darkness of space. The Devourer ships caught in the beams seemed to dissolve, their hulls breaking apart under the intense power. Victory seemed certain. Then the Devourers adapted again. Their hulls shifted, developing new crystalline structures that absorbed the energy attacks. But they didn't just defend, they redirected the absorbed energy back at the Zephyrian fleet. The beautiful crystal ships exploded in brilliant flashes, destroyed by their own weapons turned against them. "How is this possible?" Jiho whispered, watching the tactical display in horror. "They're learning from every attack, becoming immune to it, then using it against us." The luminal defense grid was next. The energy-based beings had created a network of power stations that could redirect stellar energy into massive defensive barriers. It was considered impenetrable, a wall of pure force that no physical attack could breach. The Devourers studied the barrier for exactly 17 minutes. Then they began converting their own ships into energy-based forms, copying the luminal technology and turning it against its creators. The defense grid collapsed as the Devourers absorbed its power and added it to their own capabilities. Lieutenant Minho turned from his station, his face grim. "Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. It's a distress call." The main screen activated, showing the emergency session of the Galactic Council. The same beings who had voted to quarantine humanity just months before now looked desperate and defeated. Elder Lum's energy form flickered weakly as she spoke. "We are formally requesting assistance from Earth," she said, her voice carrying none of its usual authority. "Our advanced tactical systems have proven insufficient against this enemy. They adapt to everything we throw at them. We need ... We need new ideas." Captain Jiho looked at the tactical display, watching red markers spread deeper into civilized space. The Devourers were learning from every battle, becoming stronger and more dangerous with each encounter. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations were helpless against an enemy that could evolve faster than they could adapt. "Send a message to Earth Command," he told his communications officer. "Tell them the galaxy needs us now." The emergency session of the Galactic Council looked very different from the confident gathering that had voted to quarantine humanity just months before. The crystalline halls were dimmed, and the representatives sat in subdued silence, as desperate. Reports continued to flood in from the outer systems. The Devourers had consumed 12 more colonies in the past day alone. Professor Sujin Choi walked slowly into the chamber, weathered hands carrying a stack of old leather-bound books. Behind her, the human delegation followed, each carrying similar collections of ancient texts and data tablets. The sight of physical books caused murmurs of confusion among the council members, who had long ago converted all their knowledge to digital formats. "Thank you for accepting our request for assistance," Elder Lum said, her energy form flickering. "Weakly, we must admit that our tactical systems have proven inadequate against this enemy." Sujin nodded respectfully and placed her books on the speaker's podium. "Before we begin, I would like to see your tactical databases. Everything you know about warfare and military strategy." Admiral Vex activated the holographic display, and the chamber filled with complex mathematical models and strategic algorithms. The collective's database appeared first, showing perfectly calculated battle formations and optimized resource allocation charts. The data was clean, precise, and covered approximately 200 years of recorded conflicts. "Very impressive," Sujin said, studying the display. "Your computational models are quite sophisticated. I can see why you were successful for so long." The Zephyrian Tactical Archives came next, followed by the Luminal Strategic Protocols. Each database was advanced and detailed, but they all shared certain characteristics. They were relatively recent, covering only a few centuries of each species. History, they focused on efficiency and technological superiority. Most importantly, they assumed that conflicts would be resolved through overwhelming force or superior technology. Now, Sujin said, opening one of her ancient books, "Let me show you what we brought." Dr. Haniel Park activated the human holographic display, and the chamber gasped. The timeline stretched back thousands of years, showing layer upon layer of human conflicts. Ancient battle formations appeared next to modern space combat scenarios. Siege weapons from medieval times rotated alongside nuclear submarines. The sheer scope of human military history was overwhelming. 5,000 years of warfare, Sujin explained, her voice calm and professional. Every major conflict, every tactical innovation, every strategic principle that our ancestors learned through blood and sacrifice. We preserve it all. The council members shifted uncomfortably as humans began, describing concepts that their own species had deliberately forgotten. "All warfare is based on deception," he quoted, his voice carrying the weight of ancient wisdom. "When you are strong, appear weak. When you are weak, appear strong. Attack where your enemy is unprepared. Appear where you are not expected." "This is barbaric," Ambassador Kira whispered, her crystalline form dimming with distress. "Why would anyone study such things?" Major Salman Jang stepped forward, her uniform bearing the insignia of Earth's Historical Warfare Division. "'Cause deception works. Your fleets attack in perfect formations using optimal firing patterns. You announce your intentions through tactical communications. You fight like honorable beings." She gestured to the tactical display showing the Devourer attacks. "These enemies aren't honorable. They're adaptive predators. They learn from your honor, your predictability, your technological superiority. But they can't learn from strategies they've never encountered." Commander Hunwo Bei activated another section of the human database, showing ancient siege warfare techniques. "Consider the siege of Constantinople in 1453, said, as the display showed Ottoman forces surrounding the great city. The defenders had superior walls, better positions, and advanced weapons for their time. But they lost because the attackers used strategies that the defenders couldn't predict or counter. "You speak of death and destruction so casually," Elder Lum said, her energy form pulsing with distress. "How can you treat such suffering as mere educational material?" General Taeyang Shin, a weathered veteran with gray hair and sharp eyes, stepped forward. "Because forgetting the lessons of war doesn't prevent war, it just makes you lose when it comes. We study these conflicts not because we enjoy violence, but because we understand that survival sometimes requires strategies that your enemy cannot predict." The display shifted to show the Devourer attack patterns, and the humans began their analysis. Unlike the Council's computer models, the human approach was different. They looked for patterns that reminded them of historical precedents, finding echoes of ancient battles in the movements of alien fleets. "Look at this," Dr. Haniel Park said, highlighting the Devourer formation. "They move like Mongol cavalry. Fast, adaptive, always learning from their enemies. But the Mongols had weaknesses that their enemies eventually discovered. The Devourers adapt to direct confrontation," Professor Sujin observed, "just like the Roman legions adapted to barbarian tactics. But the Romans were eventually defeated by enemies who used strategies they couldn't understand or counter." The council members watched in fascination and horror as the humans dissected the Devourer tactics through the lens of historical warfare. They spoke of strategic retreats, false surrenders, and psychological warfare with the same casual tone that other species used to discuss scientific theories. "This is why we preserve our military history," Sujin concluded. "Not because we love war, but because we understand that the past teaches us how to survive the present. Your advanced civilizations purged these lessons, but we kept them. And now, perhaps they might save us all." The combined fleet that gathered at the Kepler defense line looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. Instead of the perfect formations that alien commanders preferred, the ships were scattered in what appeared to be random clusters. Some vessels hung back behind asteroid fields, others formed loose groups that seemed to have no tactical purpose. The few ships appeared to be completely out of position. Admiral J10 stood on the bridge of the flagship Sol, watching the confused faces of his alien counterparts on the communication screens. Admiral Vex of the Collective kept running calculations through his hive mind, trying to understand the human formation. Ambassador Kira's crystalline form flickered with uncertainty as she studied the tactical display. Admiral Vex said, his multiple consciousness streams rippling with concern. Our tactical computers cannot identify any logical pattern in your ship placement. This formation appears ... chaotic. That's the point, O replied calmly, his weathered face showing no emotion. Your computers are trying to find logic in tactics that are deliberately illogical. The Devourers have adapted to every logical strategy you've used. Elder Lum's energy form pulsed with confusion. But how can illogical tactics be effective? Warfare is about efficiency, optimal positioning, maximum firepower concentration. Sometimes, O said, the most effective strategy is the one your enemy cannot predict or understand. We're about to use tactics that haven't been seen in space combat before because they were developed on Earth centuries ago. The long-range sensors began detecting the approaching Devourer swarm. The enemy ships moved with their usual confidence, their adaptive hulls already shifting and changing as they prepared for battle. They had learned from every previous encounter, developing defenses against energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, and coordinated AI tactics. Enemy contact in 15 minutes, reported Captain Yun Ji-yoon from her position with the forward squadron. They're maintaining standard approach formation, adapting their hulls for the weapons they expect us to use. Perfect, O said quietly. Captain Yoon, initiate the withdrawal. What happened next shocked every alien commander watching. The human forward squadron, which should have been the first line of defense, suddenly turned and began fleeing. Their ships scattered in apparent panic, engines at full power as they raced away from the approaching enemy. What are they doing? Kira's voice carried notes of horror. They're abandoning their positions. Admiral Vex's calculations went wild as he tried to process the human behavior. This makes no tactical sense. They're exposing their flanks, breaking formation, showing weakness to the enemy. The Devourers responded exactly as their programming dictated. Seeing the humans in retreat, they accelerated their pursuit, their adaptive technology focusing on speed and offensive capabilities. They had learned that retreating enemies were easy targets, and their hulls shifted to optimize for the chase. They're taking the bait, O observed with satisfaction. The Devourers are programmed to pursue and destroy. They cannot resist following what appears to be a fleeing enemy. Captain Yoon's ships continued their panicked retreat, leading the U.S. Devourers swarmed deeper into the asteroid field. The alien commanders watched in confusion as the humans seemed to be leading their enemies exactly where they wanted to go. This is madness, Elder Lum whispered. They're leading the enemy into a trap, but they're also trapping themselves, are they? Oh, asked, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. Captain Yoon, execute Phase 2. Suddenly, the retreating human ships spun around with precision that revealed their apparent panic had been completely fake. At the same time, the ships that had been hidden behind asteroids emerged from their concealment, surrounding the Devourer swarm that had followed. The bait. Ancient Earth naval tactic, O explained, as the alien commanders stared in amazement. A feigned retreat followed by encirclement. Admiral Yi Sun-sin used this strategy against the Japanese fleet in 1592. The enemy thought they were chasing a defeated foe, but they were actually being led into a trap. The Devourers found themselves surrounded, their adaptive technology completely confused. They had learned to counter every known form of galactic warfare, but their databases had no reference for tactics that were centuries old. Their hulls began shifting frantically, trying to adapt to a strategy they couldn't understand. Their learning algorithms are overloading, reported Lieutenant Minho Lee from the sensor station. They're trying to process tactical patterns that don't exist in their programming. Captain Wu Jinhan's squadron implemented the next phase of the ancient strategy. Instead of using the energy weapons and kinetic projectiles the Devourers expected, They began using tactics that predated space warfare entirely, using momentum and positioning rather than technological superiority. Supply line disruption, Commander Yaren Ko reported. As her ships began targeting the Devourer communication networks, another ancient tactic cut off their ability to coordinate and adapt. The Devourers, for the first time since their invasion began, found themselves on the defensive. Their adaptive technology, so effective against logical and predictable tactics, was useless against strategies that followed no recognizable pattern. How is this possible? Admiral Vex asked, his calculations finally stabilizing as he began to understand what the humans had done. Because Admiral O replied, sometimes the oldest weapons are the most effective ones. The Devourers learned to counter advanced civilizations, but they never learned to counter strategies that those civilizations had forgotten. The battle continued, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The galaxy's most advanced enemy had been defeated by tactics that were older than spaceflight itself. The Battle of Vega Prime stretched across 3 long days, but those who witnessed it would remember it for the rest of their lives. The Devourer swarm, which had seemed unstoppable for months, found itself facing an enemy unlike anything in their adaptive databases. Captain Wu Jinhan guided his squadron through the asteroid fields, using tactics that would have been familiar to submarine commanders from Earth's ancient ocean wars. His ships moved silently through the debris, striking at Devourer supply lines before vanishing back into the shadows. The enemy's adaptive technology kept trying to counter these attacks, but the strategies were too old, too primitive for their advanced systems to understand. Target their communication relays, Han ordered over the secure channel. Just like the Wolfpack tactics from the Second World War, hit them where they can't see us coming, then disappear before they can adapt. The Devourers had learned to counter every form of advanced space warfare, but they had never encountered tactics developed for hiding in Earth's dark oceans. Their hulls shifted frantically, trying to adapt to an enemy that struck from the shadows and vanished before they could respond. Meanwhile, Commander Yaren Ko was fighting a different kind of battle entirely. Her ships broadcast false signals and fake distress calls, creating confusion in the Devourer ranks. The enemy's adaptive systems tried to process the misinformation, but found themselves caught in a web of deception that traced back to strategies used by ancient Chinese generals. Phase 3 is working, Ko reported to Admiral O. Their coordination is breaking down. They're responding to targets that don't exist and ignoring real threats. The Devourers, who had conquered advanced civilizations, through superior adaptation, found themselves paralyzed by tactics they couldn't understand. They're learning algorithms designed to counter logical military strategies. Mingyu Park coordinated the most complex part of the human strategy. His ships flew false colors, pretending to be retreating alien vessels, while actually leading Devourer forces into carefully prepared ambushes. The enemy systems kept trying to identify friend from foe, but the humans changed their signals and appearance so frequently that the Devourers couldn't keep track. False flag operations successful, Park reported as another group of Devourer ships fell into his trap. They think we're Zephyrian refugees, but we're actually leading them into the minefield. The alien commanders watched in amazement as humans used deception and misdirection with the same casual skill that other species used advanced technology. These weren't just military tactics. They were psychological warfare techniques, refined over thousands of years of human conflict. Admiral Dex of the Collective tried to process what he was seeing through his hive mind calculations. Their strategies make no logical sense, he reported to the other council members. They appear to be losing. Then suddenly, they're winning. They seem chaotic, but everything is actually planned. That's the point, Professor Sujin explained from her position. On the command ship, the Devourers adapt to logical strategies. But what happens when you use strategies that appear illogical, but are actually based on deep understanding of psychology and human nature? The battle reached its climax on the 3rd day. The Devourers, frustrated by their inability to adapt, 2 human tactics launched a massive assault on what appeared to be the main human fleet. Their hulls had shifted to counter every weapon they expected to face. It was actually a carefully crafted illusion. The real human ships attacked from directions the Devourers had never considered, using weapons and tactics that their adaptive systems couldn't process. Some ships rammed enemy vessels in suicide attacks reminiscent of ancient naval battles. Others used debris as weapons, turning the battlefield itself into a tool of war. The last Devourer vessel fell as its adaptive hull finally gave up trying to counter strategies it couldn't understand. The alien ship systems, designed to learn and evolve, were overwhelmed by tactical approaches that followed no pattern their programming could recognize. As the battle ended, the galaxy fell silent. The Devourers, who had seemed unstoppable, were gone. Their adaptive technology, so effective against advanced civilizations, had been defeated by wisdom that was older than spaceflight itself. Elder Lum's energy form pulsed with something that might have been awe. You won not through superior technology, but through superior understanding. How is this possible? Because we never forgot where we came from, Professor Sujin replied, her weathered hand still holding the ancient text she had brought to the council. While your civilizations purged their violent histories, we preserved ours. Every mistake, every innovation, every hard-won lesson learned through blood and sacrifice, we kept it all. The formal request from the Galactic Council arrived within hours of the battle's end. Earth would establish military academies throughout Council space, teaching the galaxy species that remembering the past, even its darkest chapters, was essential for securing the future. General Tai Yung-shin, reviewing the after-action reports, smiled grimly as he made his final entry. The Devourers were evolved to counter advanced civilizations, he wrote, but they never learned to counter the wisdom of ages. Sometimes the oldest weapons are indeed the most effective ones. The galaxy had learned that progress wasn't always about moving forward. Sometimes survival meant remembering where you came from.